Hi guys, welcome to the channel. This video will be a continuation of the part 1 how to make a base mesh video. We'll be starting from the blockout we did in that part, focusing on joining the separate objects using the Boolean union modifier, smoothing them out, and then starting in on adding in some detail. At the end of this stage I end up with something like this. I'm going to go for a more stylized, cartoony look with my character, but feel free to explore wherever your style takes you. Before we start, I'd like to mention I will be making use of a built-in Blender add-on called Bool Tools. You can enable it up in the Edit Preferences menu. This add-on makes working with Boolean modifiers much easier and is pretty key in one of the steps we do in this video. I'm going to start off by Control-tabbing into Sculpt mode and then using the Voxel Remesh function to increase the resolution of each object, so we can start adding some rough details and tweak the shape a little bit better before we join everything. You could arguably just skip this step to where we join everything, as it's a little bit of overkill. I just find I like to do it personally to tighten things up. For a quick overview on how the remesh function works, you can see for the head, tabbing into edit mode, we have the default resolution and topology of the head. Now when I go up to the voxel remesher, with the default 0.1 size here, when I press remesh and tab back into edit mode, the head has been remeshed with a more uniform topology. The lower the voxel size number, the higher the resolution. Don't forget to turn on sculpting symmetry if you happen to have it off. Now I'm going to start adding in some subtle details and tweak the shapes of each object of the body to tighten things up a bit. Here I'm using the clay strips brush and holding Control to invert the brush. Holding Control while using any brush inverts it. The clay strips brush is probably one of my most used brushes. Now moving on to the jaw, you can use the shortcut Control R to remesh without having to go up to the menu each time. You can remesh the same block many times. I remesh quite regularly as I sculpt. It cleans up the distribution of vertices for the model each time, which is a good kind of soft reset when sculpting. And then onto the nose, pressing Control R to remesh and then tweaking and refining the shape of it more. I'll speed up the video here for a few minutes and let you exercise some artistic freedom on how you may want your character to look and how you want to adjust things. I'm just going to be repeating the same step here for each object of the body with Control R to remesh and then tweaking and refining the shape. Just as an aside, if you are using version 2.9 and are wondering where the polycount figures are, you have to enable them up in the Overlays menu here by clicking on the Statistics button. Each time you use the voxel remesher, if the voxel size you use is smaller than your object's current voxel size, the poly count will increase. I think it's always important to be aware of the poly count to make sure things don't get bogged down later, especially when texturing or rigging. Okay, so now to the next step, joining the blocks. Before we do, I would suggest saving a backup file at this point, as the next step is destructive, as they say, or basically not reversible. I'm going to start with the head here. Shift selecting the neck, chin, nose, jaw, ears, and head. And then I'm going to press Control and the plus sign on the numpad. This will automatically add a Boolean union modifier to all of the blocks, as you can see over on the right. Then click Apply All up at the top of the modifier stack. To get rid of the box outlines, go over to the layer panel on the right, and you can see that all but the last mesh you selected are now hidden in the final render. You can click on the visibility toggle to hide them now, as we don't need them anymore. They are now a part of the last mesh you selected. I'm going to rename the head to body so it's more clear down the road, as we'll be joining all the other pieces to this one. Now that they're joined, let's go into sculpt mode and then turn on the Dyn Topo mode up at the top. We will change the detailing method to constant detail and then increase the resolution to something like 6 or 7, then click on Detail Flood Fill. Now we can go in and start smoothing the creases with the smooth brush. So again, selecting 4 or 5 objects, with the newly named body mesh being last, and then pressing Control and the plus on the numpad to add the Boolean union modifier to all of the objects. Then click on Apply All at the top of the modifier stack. Keeping an eye on the poly count again here, with the Dyn Topo resolution of 6, I noticed the poly count goes down a bit. If you want to avoid losing too much detail, you can increase it so that the poly count stays the same or increases. Here I go from 6 to 6.5 as an example, and the poly count stays about the same so I don't lose as much detail. This isn't super important at this particular stage, but I thought I'd point it out. Now just going to smooth everything out with the smooth brush. I find when I try and select more than 4 or 5 objects and use the Boolean union modifier, Blender spits out an error and I sometimes have to restart to get the Booleans working correctly again. But my computer sucks, so that may be why. I'll speed the video up here again for a few minutes as I'm just repeating the same process to join and smooth everything. Okay, so now I'm going to use the Dyn Topo mode to add in some details on the face and hands. Using the clay strips brush to add in some brows, you can press Shift plus F to change the strength of the brush quickly. This is especially handy if you're using a mouse. Using the crease and scrape brush to accentuate the nose. I especially like to use it on the underside of the nose. Using the crease brush and creating a subtle M shape for the mouth, then using the clay strips brush to lay some geometry down for the lips and the philtrum, the little crease on the upper lip. Pressing M to access the mask tool to mask off the upper lip here. The black part will be unaffected by your brush. You can press Ctrl plus I to invert the mask and Alt M to clear the mask. Then pulling the corners of the mouth back and the lips out a bit to round out the mouth. Using the inverted clay strips brush by holding Ctrl to dig out the hollow of the cheeks, and then the clay strips brush to add in some of the cheekbones. Okay, face looks okay. Moving on to the hand. Pressing Alt-B will allow you to set the clipping region in the viewport, which makes orbiting around objects a little easier if things are getting in the way. Okay, so now I'm going to disable Dyntopo mode and use the voxel remesher again to further refine. When you use the voxel remesher, you should also check to make sure that there are no weird artifacts in tight areas like between the fingers and around the eyes. If the voxel size is too big or the resolution is too low, you can end up with bad, jagged artifacts distorting your model. Here on the fingers and eyes it looks okay, but you'll notice I have some weird artifacts underneath the chin. So I'm going to Control Z to undo the voxel remesh. To help fix this, you can either increase the voxel size or you can put more space in between the two parts of the mesh that are joining. Here I'm going to use the lasso mask tool to mask off the chin and then pull the chest away a bit. Now I'm going to increase the voxel size just a tad and then try again. There you go, looks a lot better. Now I'm going to go through and smooth things out again and start further refining the sculpting details. To get the more stylized look, I like to use the crease brush as well as the inverted crease brush and the scrape brush. Here I'm just having fun for a few minutes, trying different looks. I have the Dota character in my head, but I also just want to have fun creating my own take on it. Okay, so just wrapping up the hand, and there you have it. Part 2 done. In the next part, we will do a little bit more cleanup and then start adding in some clothing and accessories. Hit me up on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook and show me what you have so far. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope it helped, and see you in the next one.